Hi, my name is Charlie, and welcome to my channel, Charlie B Creations, where I take the ideas in my head and put them into the world. And today we're going to be working with an Ever After High Briar Rose body. I started with taking off her head and separating off her hair to reuse it in the future. And then I traced around her body and Clawdeen Wolf's body and kind of like cut out pieces and then retraced it onto a piece of tracing paper to create a template for the body I wanted to make. Then I used the scalpel to mark out where that I would cut the body with, or like saw my body. I cut the body into pieces with my saw. I think it's a little jeweler saw, and just cut her into tons of pieces. I did not cut out any pieces in between, because the plan is to make kind of a puzzle piece connection the way that I did with my Rosy Maple Moth doll. That was my Valentine's Day video this year. And so I needed to keep the extra length. However, I could have cut out a little extra length with her ankles because at the first trial, her legs were still a little long. So you can see that I cut all the pieces, and then I made these markings on each of the body parts that would slot into each other, kind of as puzzle pieces do. And there you can see what that looks like, and it just means that when I do start attaching the body pieces together, they don't shift around too much. Here I tape them together to check the fit. You can see that one set is longer than the other and that the legs are still a little bit long. Then I attach them together in a way that I don't think is the best way to do it, but it's a way that worked for me at the moment. I think I used a hot pin to push through the pieces and connect them together, and then I also sometimes used some embroidery thread and super glue to attach the pieces together. Now here I'm using epoxy Sculpt, and I'm wearing gloves, and I am going over the connections that I've after I'd connected them together with the hot pins and the super glue and the embroidery thread, which I didn't show you how to do it because I didn't feel it was the safest way to do it. To be honest, I wouldn't recommend it. I'll let you know when I come up with something that works really well. I went in and secured those connections with epoxy Sculpt, and now I'm going in and defining her shape. Some of the connections were still a bit bumpy, so I smoothed those out, and I wanted her to be a little chunkier than the Ever After High body was by itself. I wanted her to still have her baby fat, like the way that kids do when you're kind of in puberty, but you haven't had your growth spurt yet, so you're can get a little chunky like that. I think that's very cute, and so I tried to do that. So I bulked up her thighs, her upper arms, and I bulked up her hips a little bit as well. Part of this was to make her chest look proportionally a bit smaller. Part of it was because in modifying her body, I cut away the smallest part of her waist. And part of it was also just because I like the way that doll clothes sit on bodies that shape. Then I also went in and smoothed out her ankles one more time. I made her feet a lot smaller on this doll, and that's because the Ever After High dolls have the same foot size as G1 Monster High dolls, and I just don't have any of those shoes. And I also thought it would look disproportionate with the rest of her body if I left her feet untouched. But what's quite exciting, what I will show you later in the video, is that her feet now perfectly fit into G3 shoes. I'm sure there's empty space at the toes, but they fit. Isn't that exciting? So here you're seeing me working on the upper arm, and now what are we working on? I don't know. Sorry, this is again quite chaotic. Whenever I work with epoxy Sculpt, I make sure I have some water to smooth it out, and also when sanding, I have a little cup of water on the table so that I can wet sand. I don't have a place that I can sit and not have the dust go everywhere in my house, but I find that wet sanding keeps the dust to like one area, which is on my gloves, on my table, and on the doll. Once she was sanded as smooth as I felt that I could get her, I went in and started painting her. This was a bit troublesome. This first color that I mixed was actually perfect and I did a great job. But what happens with me in color matching is that I get kind of bored. And then I get really hasty. Like I can't get done with it too soon. So I stop double checking that my colors are accurate. I stop being as careful in my mixing, and it just becomes a bit of a waste of paint, and I just end up with like a slightly wrong color, and then it dries even more wrong, and it's just all quite frustrating. So that was also happening here on this doll. As I said, got it perfectly right the first layer, and then as I went on, I kept mixing slightly wrong colors because I ran out of the first color. And I'll talk about that a bit later. In this video, I recorded quite a couple chatty little clips, and I think it's quite fun, and I want to see, I'm just experimenting with what I want to do with my videos, and this was actually quite fun. I think maybe for my next video, I will just try and kind of almost record like a crafting vlog, like here's what I'm up to now, because I really found it very fun to give my little updates. The one problem is that I'm way too chatty, so prepare yourself for a long video, sit back, relax, get a snack, get a drink, and soon I'm gonna leave you to chat in real time. I hope you enjoy. I'm excited to show you how this all turns out. I left it in stages, so right now we're working on the body, then we're gonna work on the hair, and then you're gonna see the rest. So this is where we're at right now. The yellow paint stained her face. Okay. Let's see. You can see not really anything is coming off on the cotton bud, which tells me that she's stained. Next, I kind of didn't mix I mixed like exactly the right color first round, and then I got a bit impatient and I mixed a color that is not right. And I noticed how wrong it looked and thought I could correct it by like kind of overcorrecting and mixing a shade that was slightly too light, but then diluting it with this glue, which for some reason, out of everything I've tried, is the best sealant for like paint on doll bodies. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know what's in it. It's really a bit silly, but I find that it dries quite matte, but like with a bit of a satiny sheen, and it does not rub off very well, very easily. However, that left streaks. So now I'm going to go in with one more layer and keep my fingers crossed that the streaks will disappear. I just don't feel like it's necessarily, it feels like a day where things are kind of going wrong. I think it's cute that it looks like she kind of has back rolls. Okay, I think this is her body covered. It still looks so streaky, but we're gonna see how this goes. I have this little spot where I'm hanging her by her chin off of a drawer. So now that the body is done, I'm going to show you actually some slides from my Instagram, which was trying to figure out what her hair would look like. I got the vision of a green Howleen and really liked it, also because of the rhyme, but people on my Instagram did not agree, and in the end, I'm with them, but it was a difficult process. I had this orange hair that I thought I might use, but through much iterating process, we actually ended up picking Ghoul Spirit Toralize hair that I had left over, and it is like this red, pink, orange blend that I think turned out really nicely. I had to kind of like smooth it out between some plastic with gel to like untangle it. And then I took the Howleen head and sketched out a braiding pattern for her. And I mixed the color that was as close as possible to the hair to kind of lay out the layout of the head. Oh my gosh. And yeah, that's what you're watching now. I just took a small brush and laid it out. And in deciding to do Howleen's hair, I, during this whole process, was always considering what my Clawdeen looks like and how they would look next to each other. And I realized that my Clawdeen, she ended up with textured hair because I gave her micro braids and then decided I didn't like that. So now she has like very finely textured, like just quite coarse hair, I would say, rather than very smooth all over her head, but that's kind of it. And I wanted to, with Howleen, show the fact that Clawdeen is half black within the G3 canon, and so Howleen would be too. And like, I'm not exactly trying to fit within the G3 canon. I'm trying to invent my own, but I wanted to stay with that and actually attempt to do some hair that would look more culturally appropriate. And here what I'm doing is I'm taking a darker purple color and kind of not sketching out, but I guess it is like a sketch in the way that it's like a bit of a road map. I'm making little dots for where that I will reroute the hair into. Every little stripe is a braid, but then I'm going to give her cornrows, which is quite similar to, I think, a Dutch braid. And so for each stripe, I'm putting dots on either side and then a dot in the middle of each of those dots. I hope the visual helps. And that's because the braids are with 3 pieces. And so I needed to make sure that I'd have 3 locations for the hair to be added. And it doesn't have to be perfectly like every single time that you move the braid that there needs to be a plug of doll hair in the head. It isn't that strict. I hope this visual helps. There's a line in the middle of hair plugs and then the little mirrored sides. So then I have my pieces of hair prepared. They have gel in them to like kind of keep them coherent because they're kind of short and unruly. And I have my rerouting tool. That's a hand drill with a needle cut at an angle. And I'm not actually following those dots. I just wanted to give those to show you kind of what I would do because it very quickly becomes very visually overwhelming. So this is the current state of Howleen. You can see she has some stringy hairs hanging out. She has the glue. Oh, you can hear that. I think, let's see. I think the glue is set inside of her head. Yeah, I think so. So that means we can continue on. You can see that I hope this all makes sense. While rerouting her head, I went 1 braid at a time. I started at the top. You can see these are quite thick braids. As I went down, I stopped adding as much hair. You can see I did not use each of the rooting holes. So use a little tool to point. You can see the little purple dots. Right there, right here. I did not use all of them. Here at the top I did, or not even. You can see here I skipped one. I think on this one I did. I put those there to give myself something to reference, but as you can tell here on this braid, I skipped quite a bit of holes and did the braid and then realized that it needed this little bit of hair here to anchor it properly.
or like here, this one. Oh my gosh. This braid, I added a little bit of hair here because it seemed quite bald. And for this braid, you can see this is just a big open space. So I added this bit of hair here to go over and kind of anchor the braid to here. You can also see that there's these little bits of hair sticking out. Those I intend to either cut off or push into the head. I think because I've already glued the inside of the head, I will just cut them off. But I've been wanting to show how that I do this. It's very time intensive, but I think it looks quite nice. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebraid most of the head, and then maybe this one, I think this is one of the longest braids, I will show. So let's see.
So here we are now. I have the head in this little jig where I have a binder clip attached to a clamp. And the clamp is there because it's kind of heavy, and the binder clip is there because it fits into the neck hole and can hold on to the clamp. As I said, it gets a bit visually overwhelming, so I'm going to try my best to, with my words, explain what you're seeing on the screen. Before I did this on Howleen, I did this on my caddy custom. You might have seen her, and I got a couple questions on how I did it, so here we go. You can see that throughout the stripe where the braid is supposed to go, there's plugs every now and then, and at the top there's always 3 because you need 3 to start a braid. And I am going to take one of the side pieces, one of the pieces on the side, and put it between the other 2 pieces. And that's just, if you don't know how to braid, I suggest you look it up. It's really not something that I feel like I can explain here. And then whenever one of my pieces in the braid reaches a rooted piece of hair, I am adding it to that piece and then continuing my braid. As you do with a Dutch braid, French braid, cornrow, you're braiding as close to the head as possible, pulling it quite tight. And this is why it's important that the hair has been glued at this point already. If you're doing the preliminary braids that I was doing to kind of keep everything neat, you don't want to pull tight because you will just be pulling the hair out. Another way you could handle it is just by using hair ties, probably. But you can see that I'm really pulling it as tight as I can. And in 3-strand braids, you always have 2 pieces that are crossing over each other, and then another piece that in that like movement has kind of become singled out. You want to take that singled out piece and put it between those 2. And then the piece that was in the middle has now become an outside piece and is crossed over with the current middle piece. And then you put that other one in the middle of the 2. It's, yeah. I hope you can see it. I hope it makes sense. And you can see that I'm now like grabbing another little piece and making sure it's separated from the rest and just putting it under. You want to go under so that you can pull it really tight and so that the pieces of hair that are rooted into the head are kind of flush with the head, and that means that it can add some texture to your eventual scalp painting without making the painted pieces, the painted bits of the scalp look like very, very flat. And you just keep doing that. And what I did on Caddy is that I added a lot more hair, so then whenever I would be at this point where I'm pulling everything tight, I would add another piece of hair where the middle is in the middle of the braid and just hold it to the 2 outer pieces, if that makes sense. And that's how her braids look a lot thicker than Howleen's braids. I thought Howleen, I wanted her to have just her natural curly bright orange hair, and on Caddy I wanted her to have like thicker, heavier, sturdier braids, and so that's why I added hair to her. But that's something that you can do here in this method. It really is, you have to dedicate yourself to it. This took me maybe 2 or 3 days to get it done in stages. But because you're not rerooting the whole head as densely as you would with a regular reroot, I wouldn't argue it takes a ton of time longer. You just have to do a bit more planning and then be a bit more considerate of what you're doing. But I think for the results that it gives, this technique is incredibly worth it. I think she's standing next to my iPad as I'm recording this right now, and she is so cute. Her hair looks so nice. She's so adorable. Not to pat myself on the back a little too much, but I feel incredibly proud of her. I feel like I've proven myself to myself a little bit here with how adorable she turned out. On the screen, I'm still braiding. And you can see that now we're kind of going around a curve, and I'm really trying to pull it as tight as possible here, because whenever it gets a little bit too loose on the outside of the curve, the braid tends to pull to the inside of the curve quite a bit. I tried to prevent that as much as I could, but in the end, I did have some braids that I ended up like putting glue under. You can actually see there's this red little ball that's a pin holding that braid down, because it was just shifting a bit too much for me and it had gotten loose at some point. So I put some glue under it and then squished it onto the head where I wanted it to be, and then pushed a pin through to hold it there. That is something that you can do, and it ends up looking perfectly fine. I can't see that I glued it. So that's something I would suggest you do as well if you're having trouble getting your braids to lay where you want them to lay. And I really genuinely hope that I'm able to explain myself enough, because I think this method is really cool and really fun and really exciting, and I see so much beautiful work within the doll community, and I hope that if I can explain this in a way that is understandable enough that other people feel capable of trying it, I just can't wait to see what people will do. There's such artistic, like, beautifully talented people in the doll community. I want to see what they can do. So this is what she looks like now. I am using some thread to bind off both her ponytail at the back and the little braids in the front. And I'm going to show you how I do it. I take a doubled over thread and put that through my needle so that the thread is actually like quadrupled. And then I twist it around itself and push it through the braid, and twist it around itself and push it through the thread and push it around itself. And I just kind of make one big knot, but I try and make it look nice. That's basically how I do it. And for the front braids, I made them like kind of armpit level, which in my initial sketches, I think they were more chin level. That's on me, oops. But I still think it looks quite cute. And the reason I tied it off with thread rather than with an elastic is that elastics can sometimes be a little bit bulky, especially in the tiny front braids. But another thing is that elastics will just disintegrate with time. And because I'm putting so much work into our hairstyle, I wanted to make sure that it would stay in place. So now I have twisted the pieces of her hair on the outside of her ponytail around toothpicks because I wanted really tiny braids. However, it was kind of hard to work with the toothpicks because they were so stiff. So then the rest of her hair, I did the same as my Clawdeen pre-production, but I used just the smallest bits of hair that I could use to make sure that the curls would be as tight as I could make them. And then I like kind of twisted those pipe cleaners around the toothpicks to make sure the toothpicks also stayed in place, because the toothpicks were secured with rubber bands, and rubber bands break when put in hot water. So I needed to make sure they were secured by something else. So that's the two things that the pipe cleaners do. I am going to kind of show you how I secured the front pieces around the toothpick, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert here. This is a proof of concept. It can be done. You can make teeny tiny little doll curls with the toothpick. I don't think this is the most elegant way, I'm gonna be honest. But so I'm again using my thread, and I'm kind of putting it with the hair, and then I'm putting the toothpick in the middle of the hair, and I'm twisting it around. That's basically it. And then the little end bit of the thread, I'm twisting that around the little end of the hair to try and keep it secure. And then I think, yeah, I added more thread to hold it in place. It's not elegant, but it works decently. I thought about using tape, but my big concern here was that it would be hot water proof, but also keep the hair accessible to the hot water, because I needed to boil permit. So like, if you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. Also, if you have any questions, please ask in the comments. I want to know what beautiful doll hairstyles you will make if you want to try this method, and I am so happy to help, because I'm not fully sure that I did a good job explaining it. Yeah, here I'm wrapping some more thread around the toothpick to try and make sure that it's all secured, and it did stay in place. Like, this functioned. It just was a bit tedious. Now comes the step. This is what I saw Delightful do in her Valentine video last year, where she covered up the rooting holes in the head with air dry clay. I am using epoxy clay and this little metal tool to just push the tiniest bits of epoxy clay into the rooting holes. And I find that it holds pretty well because the head has stiffened with the glue inside. And then the braids also kind of keep the head in place. So I'm not worried about it cracking off. I'm also not going to be squeezing her head. And I just went all over her head, wherever there were rooting holes, between the braids, on the front of her hairline, everywhere. She even had some holes like on the back of her ears, I think from like a rooting machine just kind of going at her. And I just tried to fill those all up with the tiniest amount of epoxy sculpt. Like, you can kind of see how I'm using my metal tool to scrape off the tiniest bit, and then I'm smoothing it out on top of the head as far as it will go. And I'm really pressing it in. I'm using some water to make sure it doesn't stick to the tool, and just moving it around. And I'm not worried about epoxy sculpt getting on the hair at this point, because the hair is in place. The hair on the head is in place. It's going to do what it has to do. And in the end, I am going to go over it with paint to make sure it all looks good. So it's just there to provide the texture and the shape. And then in the end, the paint can make it look the way I want it to look. So there's what that looks like. The whole head, all the gray bits are the epoxy sculpt. And now the first tracks of hair, I don't know if they're called tracks, the first like paths I made for the braids kind of came off during the reroot. So now I'm going in and just painting her entire scalp with this like orangey red color, coral. I think it's coral. Just to make sure that there are no gaps anywhere, and that if there are gaps, what's underneath is this coral color. And then I'm also going in with a bit more like orangey of a color to just add some color variation. And now I've mixed a color perfectly close to her skin. This was the first color that I used on the body as well. And I'm just going to paint between her braids. I'm going to paint her scalp. So I am going to put little like lines of skin tone between each braid. And then I'm going to use, you can see this brush is absolutely tiny. Smallest brush that I own probably. I think it's like a 0/10 rather than a 6 or an 8. It's a 0 or a 10/0. I don't know exactly, but I'm just going in and very carefully painting little, like the opposite of hair strokes, but it basically is little hair strokes to make it look as if the hair is growing out of her scalp and is being pulled into the braid rather than it just being painted on. And I just did this all around her head. I also went into her little baby hairs and defined those edges a little bit. And also I think I put some like inside of little swirls of baby hair to make them look sparser and to like again give them a hair-like texture. Also in this step I wasn't too worried about making the stripes in between her braids too wide because I knew that I was going to go back in with a hair color paint and define some more hairs. And this is, I think, this is not a step that I came up with by myself, but I do think this is the step that makes it look the most like, it makes it the most effective, I think. If you skip this step, it wouldn't turn out the same. So I really took my time on this. I put a lot of care into this. It also was quite therapeutic because there wasn't a lot of stress on this step. It was just, okay, make sure that there is scalp there to work with. And so I had quite a bit of fun just sitting there and being like, okay. And then I made sure that the braids often came to a little tapered tip. Oh, and here we go. These are more slides from my Instagram on her design process. And I just had so much fun. No one could agree, but I had a lot of fun. And I ended up making a Picrew, which I will link in the description, to figure out her outfit. And if you want to, you can try one, and you're still welcome to send it to me on Instagram. I just thought that was really fun. So I've now reached a point in the doll where it's basically just busy work. And I would rather do that on the couch, cozy, rather than sitting here in my filming setup. So I'm going to give a quick rundown. I have these, I have the doll here, and so all she needs is to be sanded, but she has her final body shape. Then I have these pieces of brown fabric that I kind of, I traced her body onto. This is actually quite a bit larger than I need it to be. So actually, you're gonna live see me fix this. I like to use these jelly roll pens to mark on, especially on darker fabrics, because I find they don't bleed through too much and they're easy to see, and they also don't seem to transfer too badly. So I think that's better. It's going to be a bit of a low-waisted skirt, but I want it to fit nicely. So I'm going to transfer that here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach them like this. So there's the good side, which has no markings, the bad side, which has the markings. I'm going to put it good side, sew down this white line, and then do the same at the back, but leave maybe this much of a gap so I can add the Velcro. Let's transfer that to the other side. I hope that's about even. That's pretty good. That's actually kind of impressive. So that we have the skirt, I am going to, again, good side, sew down these darts so that it can have more of her shape, her body shape. And once that these two pieces are sewn together, I am going to also fold over this middle seam and sew a stitch down it. I think that will make a nice detail on the skirt. And I'm going to, I'll cut off these corners to reduce bulk. And I'll also fold this over and sew around the edge to give a pretty little seam. And I'll show you when it's finished what that looks like. And then I'm also going to take this long piece
and I'm going to gather it and attach it to the bottom. First, I'm going to sew over an edge just to seal it. Maybe I'll glue it, but I think this fabric might not glue too nicely. So I will put some glue on the edge, just a thin little layer so that it doesn't fray, and then fold it over to give a clean edge. And then I will gather it and attach it and fold it over, sew it down here so that, again, on the outside there's this nice seam line, and on the inside, well, not on the inside, but so that this sticks this way rather than out or up. That's the plan. Then I'm going to use this yarn that I have, which I think looks quite nice with her hair. Her hair is more orange, whereas this is more pink, but I think it's quite cute. So I'm going to crochet a little sweater out of this. It'll probably turn out quite similar to this little cardigan that Laguna has, but I want it to be a sweater. I have these pieces to make her shoes out of. I've hardened or like stiffened them with some PVA glue because I was worried they were going to fray, and I've never made doll shoes before. That I think I will show you. And I'm going to sand her body down so that it's all smooth. And once all of that is done, I will be back and we will do the finishing touches.
At this point, I'm really hoping you're not getting whiplash from constantly going back and forth between live, like, descriptions of what I'm doing, or like live chatting, and then me describing what I'm doing in this video form. Right now you're watching me make the little mesh bodysuit that was in the concept art. It turned out bad. It turned out really bad. I don't know how I messed up the measurement so bad, but in the end, her arm did not fit into it, even a little bit. So got very sad, gave up on it. And then her shoes, I tried to make shoes. They were too stiff, but also the shape just wasn't right. So I went into my stash, saw which shoes could fit her vibe. I tried Goulia's Crocs, Clawdeen, no, Torlai's sneakers, and then these shoes are from a Rainbow High doll, and I really liked how chunky they were. So those are my pick instead. Sometimes you just gotta pivot. Then I crocheted her what was gonna be a sweater, but turned out to be a cardigan. I actually lost my larger crochet hook, so I ended up not using that, so it is a bit stiff. I added a hook and eye to the back of the skirt, and now we're working on my favorite clothing piece that she has, which is her little cardigan. I used this piece of fabric, which is actually an old pillowcase, to kind of sketch out the shape that I wanted. And then I took another piece of that pillowcase, folded it in half, and pinned the kind of the pattern to it. And then I sewed the two sides together. I left the tops open, and while sewing around the sides, I also made sure to insert a little piece of ribbon that was then sewn in with the seam. And I used these tiny little stitches, which took so long, but in the end it was actually so satisfying to do. And this little clothing piece turned out so cute. I also fully skipped over it, but just a bit earlier I made kind of just a pair of yellow leg warmers. Those are made out of the mesh that was going to be her bodysuit, but it didn't end up working out as the bodysuit. But now they're her socks, and I colored them yellow. And the top of the back of the cardigan, the little vest, turned out a bit ugly, but I don't care. It works. And so I turned the piece inside out, attached it together, and then I actually did sew around all of the edges one more time, like top stitch them. I don't know my sewing terms, but I think it turned out quite cute. And then I did some chatting. The clip is about to come up. I can see it on the timeline.
The boots are gonna be brown, but then with like bright pink soles. and then I can paint her skin. My biggest thing is that Clawdeen is supposed to be 15. This is her little sister, so she's like maybe 13 or something. Is this a little much? Is this a little... Is she a little... It doesn't fit the vibe, and it, like, just layers-wise, we're already getting funky. I gave her a little earring. And I decided that the lore reason for her wearing silver, because she's a werewolf, she shouldn't be wearing silver. I've decided that... I talked with my partner about it, and we've decided that only mature werewolves are... only mature werewolves are hurt by silver. And so because she's still a little baby, a little pup, this is like her way to show rebellion of like, I'm actually stronger than you guys because silver doesn't hurt me. Because I want her to be quite cheeky, but also quite cute. And I'm so excited to take her hair out. I hope at the end of today I'll be able to take her hair out. So then, for her outfit, we have the cardigan. That's nothing new. And I have this little piece that Clawdeen has as an earring, and I'm gonna see if I can maybe glue it onto here. Then for her skirt, I wanted to add a belt, and I had this silver chain. That's also why I added the silver earring in her ear, because there was no silver anywhere else in her like design. So we have that. Then I found this little bracelet in my stash that also feels like it adds something a bit cheekier. I feel like her outfit is a bit too cutesy for how I want her to look, so this is me trying to add like little more edgy details. Then with her little cardigan, I'm gonna paint it today and like add some details to it, but I thought it was a bit too scandalous for what's supposed to be like a 13-year-old maybe. So I thought I took this. This is the mesh from Laguna's sweater. Here. I've taken this thing apart. And I turned it into a little bodysuit, and it fits her quite well. It's a bit finagly with such tiny pieces of fabric, but it covers her up, and it still has like the meshiness, so that I think the layering is more interesting and there's more texture, but also she's a bit more covered up because that was a little scandalous. And the reason the original sketch had the mesh in it is that Clawdeen, her big sister, has these tights, and I wanted her to have something that mirrored that. If you look, her design is kind of building off of Clawdeen. She's got the skirt, the little shirt, the sweater or like jacket, and then she has leg warmers and the heels. So I wanted her to have similar clothing items but very different. There you can also see the little jewelry piece that I want them to match. And actually this looks a lot like the bracelet. I wanted them to mirror each other because they're sisters, but I also wanted them to have their own identities, where Clawdeen is more cutesy and a bit shy, but also like sporty with the jacket, kind of. Like the jacket is the only sporty thing about her. Fine. And then with Howleen, I wanted her to be a bit more edgy, but also I remember in G1, her style was very much about hand-me-down, so I imagine this is like maybe a hand-me-down from Clawdeen, and this is maybe a hand-me-down from another sibling, and then maybe this she found in a thrift store, stuff like that. Then we have her boots, which I'm still gonna paint. Oh, that's out of frame. I'm still gonna paint her boots. We have the yellow socks, which right now don't really fit with the color scheme, but I think I'm gonna add some yellows and some pinks onto this so it ties it all together again. And her eyes are gonna be more yellow when I'm finished with them. We have her little hands. I realized that Frankie's camera matches with these pinks quite well. So she'll have a little camera on her. And then lastly, I have 2 Twylas. I used the second Twyla to make Una, but they both came with her little phone. And so I cut off the bunny ears and I sanded down the little like ghosty edges. And I think I'm going to paint this orange so that she has a little phone.
This video is just one huge yap session.
And let's keep chatting and work on her little blouse. I'm going to hold a bake sale to make sure that I can pay all my bills. And if you yourself are interested in supporting me, either you can subscribe to my channel, you can share my videos around, you can leave likes, comments, all of those usual things to get the algorithm to notice me. But what you can also do is go to my Etsy, which I will link below, and buy a doll if it tickles your fancy. If none of those dolls seem to be what you want, you can find me on Instagram and send me a message and commission me, because I do have my commissions open. Even if it's just like, hey, this old doll you've done, like Una, my sheep girly, she's gotten so much love. She's like my magnum opus. I don't know how I did it. My first video was like my best doll. I'm kidding, but she has gotten some love and people are like, oh, could I buy her? I don't want to sell her. She feels like a real milestone. First time that I was willing to like record a video and put it on the internet. But if you'd want to, you could commission a doll quite similar to her. And I'd be very willing to do that. So I'm just going to do some little swirly swirls. Let's see if I can zoom you in. Oh, okay, that's tricky. Okay, I can do that. I think I will try and keep it symmetrical. This green doesn't really appear anywhere in a color palette. Like these stitches are kind of green, but they're more yellow. Okay, let's see. Here. But yeah, so we're gonna see how it goes. I feel a lot more invigorated taking this route in my life. I feel a lot more excited. I have spent the last 7 months being like, okay, could I do this job? Yes, I could. Could I be happy living a life that kind of centers around this job? Yeah, probably. Would I have enough time to still make my art and do what I'm passionate about, which is like my main concern? Can I work part-time and work on my art the rest of the time without, you know, burning out? That's been my main concern. And the job that I did the trial shift for, it would be on a part-time basis, but on the condition that I'd go into my education and learn how to do that job properly. And it would mean that I'm basically full-time, but on a part-time wage and going back to school, which, as someone who's gotten an ADHD diagnosis later into life and also commuted the last 3 years, I just don't really have the energy to actually be going to school anymore. I don't want to. I really don't. And so it was really like kind of going against everything I wanted to still apply for that job and show up and do the trial shifts, because what I like, first up, what I want is safety, stability, and just like the knowledge that my life isn't incredibly precarious. And I haven't had that for the last 7 months. Like, it's just, I don't know what the next month looks like. I don't know whether my family can still support me, whether my partner can still support me. I don't know exactly what any of that looks like. And so it's been quite scary. And it's just, I've reached a bit of a breaking point where if my life is going to be uncertain anyways, I might as well do what I want to do. I feel like going into art, especially in this age of social media and AI and all of that stuff, is like one of the most uncertain paths you can take. And that, but like, you go into art because you want to, because you're passionate about it. No one goes into art, well, okay, I don't know that. I don't think I should be making generalizations like that right now, but I feel like the majority of people don't go into art because they think they'll be making the big bucks. I feel like people go into art because, like, what else would they be doing? They have nothing else that they would rather be doing than making art. And they're willing to have it be a modest life. If I can afford to pay my rent, buy my groceries, maybe buy a train ticket to see my friend every couple weeks, and that's my whole life, I'll be happy. I'll be fine. Oh, and of course, like, the income to buy art supplies with, but I'll be fine. I'll be so, like, I'm only 24. I'm gonna be 25 in May. In Mermaid, by the way. I have a mermaid coming out. It's exciting. I'm gonna do a big ol' asymmetrical thing on the back, but I'm gonna leave space for a flower here. And this is gonna be so barely visible because she's gonna be wearing a cardigan, and that's fine. What was I saying? I forgot. Can you tell I have ADHD? Let's think. Yeah. Oh, right. I'm gonna be 25. And I feel like if I was doing a job making the big bucks and like saving up for my future right now, of course I'd be really happy to have that privilege. But at the same time, I think it would stress me out. I think I've lived the last couple of years just like, okay, gotta go to school, gotta make sure I get my degree, gotta figure this all out, and I'll get to live my life as soon as I'm done. I'll be done, I'll have my degree, and I'll get a little minimum wage job to make sure I can get my bills paid. Ooh, I like the way it doesn't connect, actually. And I'll just do my art for a while and see where I end up. But like, get to live life for myself rather than for my studies. That was the plan. And it just seems that like I'm needing to actually make that choice of, no, if you want to do art, you gotta, or if you want to do anything. Here's the thing. I am not living in the country that I was born in. I'm here on a residence permit. And so like I have no welfare to rely on, basically. And that would be fine if I'd be able to get any job. I think it's because I don't lie on my resume. Everyone's like, what are they gonna do? Girl, just lie. I really don't like lying. Maybe that's on me, but that's so cute to me. I love how that is looking. I'm going to add some more yellow and some white and add some highlights to the leaves. Anyway, the plan was just give myself a tiny bit of stability and then, like, you know, live my early to mid 20s with just figuring out what feels right to me, what do I want to do. And it's just kind of not working out for me necessarily. And so, okay, let's pivot. Let's see. What can I do? Oh, I'm loving how this is turning out, actually. I was just earlier, I was like, if this doesn't work out, I'm just gonna stop. I'm gonna add some little dots, maybe. That's a cute spot for a dot. So that's what's going on with me. What's going on with you guys? Tell me in the comments. Ooh, what's exciting. This is so late in the video to be talking about this. I reached 500 subscribers. At this point, we're at 525, I think. And it's really fun. I've been watching it go up like every now and then. I think posting the little shorts, it means that I like more consistently gain subscribers rather than before where I'd post a video and it would like peak for a second and then it would go back down again. I hope with my next couple videos I can be a bit more consistent. Once a month is like pretty good already, but I just would like to post more often. I don't know why I've been so slow. This is so cute. I'm having such fun. This is actually one of my favorite things. Oh no. I'm gonna have to put so much effort into what I'm noticing. Okay. We reached 500 subscribers. I'm gonna leave the dot here away because this loop is way bigger than this one. We reached 500 subscribers, which is so exciting. And I feel like I should have done a post being like, thank you guys. But it also at the same time feels so like, I don't know. I don't feel like I have that many interactions with any of you on a daily basis. And so it feels a bit tricky to like talk like that. It just feels incredibly parasocial. I think that's, no, we need a couple more dots. We need some dots here. And I want a little dot here, and I want a dot there. Ooh, no, I think that one is messing with me. We're okay, I'm overdoing it. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's cute, it's fine. I think this is a bit, the flow of the dots, I think this one really, I wanted a dot to kind of make this less symmetrical, but then this is, girl, what are you doing? Maybe I can fix it by going like this. And then putting one here. Okay, yeah, that's kind of better. Okay. Now I'm gonna mix a yellow and I'm gonna try and get it kind of close to this, but maybe a bit more saturated. And I'll can mix it in here. That's all right. What am I saying? Right. Subscribers. 500 of them. Very impressive. I'm so baffled that 500 people are like, yep, I would like to see this. And that's not me trying to like be like, my work isn't that good. I know that I put a lot of care and love into my work, and like I studied art, so I know that I have a decent level of skill, but just the fact that people see it and say, yeah, I'd like to see more of her, it just feels really nice. It feels really great. I think I've spent a lot of my life not feeling incredibly seen, and so now I'm feeling quite seen, which is very nice. And I would like to put out some more videos. Okay, that just went so orange so fast. I guess that's the color I wanted. Okay. So let's try and get little flower shapes. I think I want little flower shapes here. I want to see if I can get more videos out a bit more often. Once a month is pretty good. However, I feel like it's just a bit slow. For me, at least. I feel like I'm just at a little snail's pace. And I think it's because this Howleen project has been quite intensive. And then at the same time, I'm job hunting and navigating all these other things in my life. So, like, I understand what's going on. And then we're gonna, do a big one here. But I have, like, a list of projects. And here's the thing with 500 subscribers, that means that YouTube kind of opens up the first door to monetization, which is the first door to me being able to do this and actually make a living and not need to hold bake sales, which, like, it's really fun to hold a bake sale, but it is also quite strenuous carrying 6 kilos of flour around. And the first door to monetization is memberships. And there I'm wondering whether, and let me know in the comments if you have any ideas or suggestions, but I'm wondering whether it maybe be fun for me to like make a list of project ideas and let people vote on those. Or like I've been on my Instagram every now and then posting polls. I could figure out a way to make polls like that a bit more participatory. That's a funny word to say. Another thing I'm thinking of is that maybe I could share more behind the scenes pictures, because I try not to share too many on Instagram, because at that point, like, you've seen everything already. And it's like, it's nice and it's fun to share it, but I also want this like air of mystery and excitement. I'm like, ooh, what's the next project? What's it gonna turn out like? I love the way that looks, actually. I love the way that looks. Yay! Okay. Yeah, I finally, 10 videos in, found a nice filming setup that I can actually, you can tell that my hands are just right here. I don't have to like bend around something, which is very nice. I think I'm going to connect this a little better. There we go. Oh, no, don't spread. Don't be wet and spread, please. We're okay. We're okay. We're okay. We're okay. It's fine. Yeah. It's just, I'm trying to figure out what I can do. What I can do, what I want to do, what feels right. And if any of you, here's also the thing, I don't really have many people in my life who have made a living freelancing, and especially not a lot of people who just had to dive right in like this. So if any of you did, give me some advice, please. I made my first Etsy sale a couple days ago, which is very exciting. I don't like this, actually. Made my first Etsy sale, which was very exciting, and I shipped it off, and I was like, that's kind of fun, actually. That was kind of enjoyable, walking up to the post office being like, hey. I had to look up the customs tariff number. No, that is just bureaucracy at its finest. What do you mean this website doesn't even tell me where I have to go? You just gave me a link to a website. I don't know. This has nothing to do with anything, by the way. And I'm also trying to, it's now, at time of recording, been 2 weeks of me deciding, okay, I'll put 99% of my energy and time into like my art, my business, whatever. I found that I'm not a very good boss. I tend to overwork myself. And I've also found that work-life balance is quite difficult. I'm not happy with how these front flowers look. They're too small. How can I change that? How can I guess. Maybe I'll add a center as well. This is all over the place. Hope you enjoy my ramblings. So the plan was to kind of match the brown to this. Okay, we can do that. I think that's close enough in tone. It might darken a bit. We're gonna see. And I always water down my paints. And I always make sure to add some acrylic medium. And I use these little like, sometimes you get cardboard that's like kind of coated in plastic. And I just always use those as paint palettes because one of my biggest problems I found. Okay, wait, this is ridiculous. Why am I using such a small brush? One of the biggest problems I found working with paint is when you've been painting for a long time and your paint just starts getting gummy because all of the moisture has sunk into the cardboard. Come on. And I don't have like a plastic paint palette because I found those just, I always found them kind of annoying, to be honest. So this is my solution. And it's reusing trash, so it's like kind of great. The plan here is to make them brown to match her skirt and then paint the soles bright pink. Let's check on her, by the way. Let's check on our girl. Okay, she's still a little streaky. She's still a little streaky, but I think the color match is pretty good. And I think for me personally, because I'm not going to be selling this doll, I'm okay with this. If I would be selling this doll, if you're wanting to commission me, I won't leave you with streaks, I swear to God. I promise. However, because I don't care, I'm gonna leave it like this. This is what I don't like. Skin tone changes. How do you help this? How do you fix this? How do you prevent this? I don't think you can. Is it that visible? No. So it's fine, but we're like, ugh. So when recoloring things, I like to go in really thin layers. I've learned from the best. Ideally, I'd probably be wearing gloves so that it doesn't get all over my skin, but I can't be bothered. And I use this brush, which is really dense, but the bristles are really soft, to brush it on. Like the bristles are soft and thin and fine, yet also stiff. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And it leaves the least amount of brush strokes I've found. So that's what's going on there. And while we wait for that to dry, I'm actually gonna dress her already. Hope I don't get any paint on her, because I'm having a nice time chit-chatting like this. So here's our girly. I think I said earlier I'd do her face up first and then dress her, but I cannot wait. So her little mesh top, bodysuit actually, and it's actually the wrong side. The underside is brighter, but I thought the brightness would kind of take away from the other outfit pieces. I did not have like a lot of this fabric, and so it's really like, it barely actually fits around her arms especially, but it seems like a sturdy enough fabric to go through the stresses. And then her skirt, which I sewed these belts onto. I hope I showed that. I think I did. We will see. Editing me. I don't really like, I feel like I'm a very inactive editor. I just kind of sit and go through it, and then it's voiceover me that ties it all together. But now I'm speaking in the video. We'll see how that goes. I've done it before. That's nice. That's cute. I also think that the bodysuit helps the skirt stay in place. And then arms back so that this can get on. It's dry, right? It is dry. Nice how that goes. And now tying this is like the hardest thing ever, because I have to tie the tiniest bow. I'm going to leave as much ribbon doubled over so that I have the most length to work with. And I swear if I do this in the wrong direction, I'm gonna scream, maybe. Oh. Didn't even need the toothpicks. But is it upside down? Are you kidding me? Wait, let's carefully pull. No, I don't think it is. I did it! I did it once yesterday, and I didn't know if I'd be able to do it again, but I did it. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's so cute. She's adorable. She's so darling. Oh. So, I also think I did film me gluing this on, and it seems attached, Cool, nice. So she has a little button to match with her sister. Oh, what a cutie. Oh, how adorable. I also found this little bracelet. And then let's put her hand on. There that goes. I think we know it's there. But I think it should be hidden under the sweater, I'm going to be honest. Come on. I know you want to. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I don't think it looks nice with how bulky this cardigan is. To have it not sit, kind of give her the little sweater paws, you know? Which I don't think I perfectly symmetrically did it, but I just refuse to count my stitches. I refuse. So give her a little camera. Look, do you see how like that matches quite nicely? Cutie. She's so cute. And I think this is nice. I think this is better. It like feels a bit less inappropriate, and the flowers are actually really nice, I think.
And voiceover Charlie is back. We've got my Clawdeen custom next to my Howleen custom so that I can try and make their face ups match decently enough. I started out filling out the whites of her eyes, trying to get a similar shape to Clawdeen, and now I'm using a color quite close to her skin tone to kind of navigate where are her irises, where are her eyebrows, where are her lips. I decided to use like quite a dark brown color for her lips, and this is another face up where I used absolutely no black, just dark browns, dark grays, dark blues to try and like get the shadowy parts. Here you can see that I'm going in with this tiny little brush to paint all her baby hairs. It turned out so satisfying. I'm gonna be honest, this was so fun. This was so fun, and I think it looks so cute. And I just went over her whole head. Also on, like around the braids, I went in with this like dark red color that I'm also about to use for her eyebrows, and just kind of defined all the shapes and made everything look like tiny little hairs. And at this point I want to ask, like, are you enjoying this format of video? I'd love to hear feedback. I am just doing what I think is fun and what I feel capable of, but I also love hearing feedback. So is this video too long? This is maybe my longest video in a good while. I think maybe, like, I'm not sure. I think maybe the nickel bolus video was longer, but this video was very long. At this point I'm going in with a yellow at the center of her eye and then blending it with a brown on the edges. I use acrylic gouache, so it often gives me a bit of time to still blend the colors together. It like feels to me like a good in-between between gouache and acrylic. And I've also gone in with a color very close to her skin tone to clean up edges and to kind of like make her eyebrows look a bit more like hairs. I find it really hard to explain what's going on, but I hope visually you can see. I think this is probably my like best filming setup yet, even though you can see my hair coming into the camera here. But I think this footage turned out quite nice, and I'm quite proud of myself. And I hope that the visuals are explanatory enough, because it's moving a bit quick for me to explain. But I also don't want to make the video like even longer at this point. And I also am gonna say, I find editing face-ups kind of stressful, actually, because I feel like I'm cutting out so much, but otherwise I feel like it's so slow, and I feel like I'm doing everything twice. Her pupils look absolutely bonkers right now. One thing that I tried to do in the irises, Clawdeen's iris has a tiny little moon around it, And so I tried to give Howleen's like iris a bit of like a sunburst appearance by having these little lines of yellow going out and the lines of brown going in. And another thing I noticed is I tried to make them look similar, but because the G1 sculpts have a lot more defined eyeballs, Howleen looks a bit like weirdly realistic next to Clawdeen. Clawdeen looks quite cartoony, and Howleen, like, her eyes are huge, but they look so real. It's a little freaky, I think, but it's also quite cute. I decided to give her quite playful makeup, like little dots around her eyes and in light yellow to make it all look very youthful and fun and cute. And here's how they look next to each other. I forgot her little teeth, so of course I had to go in and make sure that she had those. I feel really pleased with her. I like her side glance. I like her slightly quirked eyebrow. And here I'm going in painting her phone case. She's not able to hold this phone because the thumb hole is too big for her. So right now I just have it tucked into her belt. And here we're going into her shoes, which look like little ice cream sandwiches with the pink. And soon I'm going to be back with a tiny little clip because I forgot to paint her nose and I didn't realize it. I have this beautiful little pinky color that I could have used for her nose and I just entirely forgot. So here's me glossing her eyes, oblivious to the fact that I forgot her nose.
Forgot to give her nose. Shit.
Rest assured, I immediately went to go make sure she had a nose. And now I'm going to show you the taking out of the hair. It took me a moment to figure out how to get the hair like out of the contraption, and I found the best method is to cut the thread in the middle and then just pull out the toothpick. And you can pull out the threads, and for the top of the head, because the pipe cleaners were the only thing securing them, I could pull out the toothpicks really easily. And then it's the same process as my pre-production Clawdeen of just loosening the curls and fluffing them, trimming off any uncurled bits. And soon it's going to be time for the final reveal. I hope you're excited to see how she turned out. I'm so happy. And now for the final reveal. Here she is. She's got her little ice cream sandwich shoes, her yellow socks, her skirt, which I think is actually very nice, with the silver belt and her little phone tucked in. Here's a little up-close look at her phone case. In the end, I did decide to paint the camera lens orange. She has her little vest with the flowers on it, her cardigan, her little pin, her face, which, as I said, it's a little overly realistic, but I also think she's adorable. Her hair, which turned out beautifully poofy. There she is! I'm so happy with how she turned out, and I thought it would be fun to show her next to some of my other dolls. So of course, I want to show her next to Clawdeen. You can see that they kind of look at each other. Clawdeen has a lot wider of a head compared to Howleen, and I think that's just the G1 versus G3 head mold. But I think the height difference is so cute. Little baby sister, she's so small. I also thought I would show her next to Twyla, who is on a petite body. This Twyla is not very customized, and that is because I actually want to keep this Twyla as is, and I want to get a Fearbook Twyla to customize. But you can see that Twyla is actually a bit taller than Howleen. Quite a bit. Let's see what she looks like without shoes. She's quite a lot shorter than Twyla, actually. I think that's so cute. I think that's so fun. That's how tall they both are without their shoes on. You can see that
Howleen is really quite a bit shorter. I think that's very cute. I think that's very cute. I think that's adorable. I'm so happy with that. And look at how satisfying. Like it snaps on. The shoes fit really well. Next, I also thought I would show her next to my shortest doll, which is Marla. She is a decent amount taller than Marla, so that still makes sense to me. I don't feel like a little puppy werewolf would be as short as a little mouse. So that's great. Then, lastly, I wanted to show her next to Abby, who is my tallest doll. I just think this is adorable. I just think this is great. I think this is so cute, so sweet. And I feel really happy with how she turned out. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had a good time. And I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye!